in for a wonderful treat. Jericho Brown is the recipient of a Whiting Writers Award and fellowships from the John Simon Guggenheim Foundation, the Radcliffe Institute for Advanced Study at Harvard, and the National Endowment for the Arts. Brown's first book, Please, won the American Book Award. His second book, The New Testament, won the Ansfield Wolf Book Award and was named one of the best of the year by Library Journal, Cold Front, and the Academy of American Poets. He's also the author of the collection, The Tradition, 2019. His poems have appeared in BuzzFeed, The Nation, The New York Times, The New Yorker, The New Republic, Time, and the Pushcart Prize anthology, and several volumes of the Best American Poetry anthologies. He's an associate professor and director of the creative writing program at Emory University in Atlanta, and his latest book just was a finalist for the National Book Award, and it should have won. Erase that from the tape, because I know the other people. But I love Jericho Brown's work. I heard him once again at the Dodge Festival, and he read a poem that was so mind-blowingly wonderful. That was the very definition of William Carlos Williams' idea that the universal is in the particular, so that in describing the particular things around him, he was able to weave in the universal without trying. It was absolutely wonderful, and I look forward to hearing more work from Jericho Brown.
Thank y'all so much for having me here. This is my third time coming here to the center, and every time it's such a delight, and it's a particular pleasure for me to be able to walk in the same area of space that people like William Carlos Williams and Allen Ginsberg have walked. I'll never be able to explain how excited I am and how happy I am and how grateful I am that I get to do what I do. Oh my God, I'm amazed by it. Can you imagine? I was 7 years old and I wanted to be a poet, and I'm a poet. It's amazing. It's amazing. Big thanks to Sue, to Dan for driving me around, to Smita, to Maria, who is Maria. Really, Maria really is a reason. She's wonderful in person, and she's wonderful as an institution builder and as somebody, as an activist for our community. And obviously, she's just a real, Maria is still putting her life on the line in her poems, and I just really admire seeing that you can have that forever. You can put your life on the line in your poems forever. I love that about her, and I love that about her work. Thank you, John, for being here forever. And to my students who were in my class today, I appreciate y'all. I had a great time. So, I always ask my students to do strange things, and sometimes my students look at me very, very like they're going to kill me. But today, everybody was so loving. So I appreciate that. I'm just going to read y'all a few poems. Is that okay? Where I'm from, we always begin with prayer. So, prayer of the backhanded. Not the palm, not the pear tree switch, not the broomstick, nor the closest extension cord, not his braided belt, but God, bless the back of my daddy's hand, which, holding nothing tightly against me and not wrapped in leather, eliminated the air between itself and my cheek. Make full this dimpled cheek, unworthy of its unfisted print, and forgive my forgetting the love of a hand hungry for reflex, a hand that took no thought of its target, like hail from a blind sky, involuntary, fast, but brutal in its bruising. Father, I bear the bridge of what might have been a broken nose. I lift to you what was a busted lip. Bless the boy who believes his best beatings lack intention, the mark of the beast. Bring back to life the son who glories in the sin of immediacy, calling it love. God, save the man whose arm, like an angel's invisible wing, may fly backward in fury, whether or not his son stands near. Help me hold in place my blazing jaw as I think to say, excuse me. One of the things that I find myself doing over and over again in my poems is trying to revive or restore much of the language that I heard in the South in Louisiana, where I'm from, much of the language I heard as a kid. This poem is titled after one of those phrases that I would hear older people say all the time. I miss hearing people say this. I don't hear it anymore. If you don't know this phrase, I think in context of the poem, its meaning will become clear to you. 4 in the morning. My mother grew morning glories that spilled onto the walkway toward her porch because she was a woman with land who showed as much by giving it color. She told me I could have whatever I worked for. That means she was an American. But she'd say it was because she believed in God. I am ashamed of America and confounded by God. I thank God for my citizenship in spite of the timer set on my life to write these words. I love my mother. I love black women who plant flowers as sheepish as their sons. By the time the blooms unfurl themselves for a few hours of light, the women who tend them are already at work. Blue, I'll never know who started the lie that we are lazy, but I'd love to wake that bastard up at 4 in the morning, toss him in a truck, and drive him under God past every bus stop in America to see all those black folk waiting to go work for whatever they want. A house, a boy to keep the lawn cut, some color in the yard. My God, we leave things green. Labor. I spent what light Saturday sent sweating and learned to cuss, cutting grass for women kind enough to say they couldn't tell the damn difference between their mowed lawns and their vacuumed carpets just before handing over a $5 bill rolled tighter than a joint and asking me in to change a few light bulbs. I called those women old because they wouldn't move out of a chair without my help or walk without a hand at the base of their backs. I called them old, and they must have been. They're all dead now, dead and in the earth I once tended. The loneliest people have the earth to love and not one friend their own age, only mothers to baby them and big sisters to boss them around. Women you want to please and pray for the chance to say please too. I don't do that kind of work anymore. My job is to look at the childhood I hated and say, I once had something to do with my hands. As all of you know, poets can't seem to get enough of Greek myth. So there's a little bit of the Odyssey in this next poem. Hero. She never knew one of us from another. So my brothers and I grew up fighting over our mother's mind. Like sun-colored suitors in a Greek myth, we were willing to do evil. We kept chocolate around our mouths. The last of her mother's lot, she cried at funerals. Cried when she whipped me. She whipped me daily. I am most interested in people who declare gratitude for their childhood beatings. None of them took what my mother gave, waking us for school with sharp slaps to our bare thighs. That side of the family is darker. I should be grateful, so I will be. No one on earth knows how many abortions happened before a woman risked her freedom by giving that risk a name, by taking it to breast. I don't know why I am alive now, that I still cannot impress the woman who whipped me into being. I turned my mother into a grandmother. She thanks me by kissing my sons. Gratitude is black, black as a hero returning from war to a country that banked on his death. Thank God, it can't get much darker than that. So thank you. This next poem is a poem that is made completely of phrases and sentences that I heard from other people as a kid growing up. So this is sort of a sketch of the neighborhood that I grew up in, given how people would speak in that neighborhood. I think because it's kind of a unified found poem. I think that there are many things that I heard that some of you in this audience will have heard too. Autobiography. Keep the line steady. Keep your back straight. Keep coming back for more. Keep fucking with me, Cletus. Keep putting your hands on me like that, and you'll always have a place to lay your head. Keep my waistline down. Keep your figure up. Keep your man happy. Keep a woman crazy. Keep your daddy off your mama, or next time I'm calling the police. Keep these nappy-headed children off my green grass. Keep talking smart if you want to. Keep looking at my man and I'll cut you a new eyelid. Keep looking me in my face when you tell your next lie. Keep on walking, I ain't talking to you anymore. Keep holding that last note. Keep singing while I get the splinter out. Keep singing for Jesus, baby, and everything will be all right. Keep me in your prayers. Keep us in your thoughts. Keep your eyes on the black one. He ain't got no sense. Keep your money in your pocket, Nelson. These hoes giving it away. Keep this one occupied. I'll get his wallet. Keep on living, honey, and you'll get old too. So I mentioned before making use of words and phrases that I heard as a kid, and thinking about these colloquialisms and about the vernacular of the South in particular. I should tell y'all, I'm originally from Shreveport, Louisiana. When I left Shreveport, I moved to New Orleans, Louisiana. I lived there for almost 10 years. I used to work as a speechwriter for the mayor of New Orleans. I fell in love with the city. I really felt like it was home, and I felt very close to Louisiana. And then I went off to school again to Houston, Texas. But as you can see, I spent most of my life in this very tight southern radius. And then I got my first teaching job, and I moved to San Diego, California, which is where I found out that I have an accent. And the other thing that I found out there is that there were all of these words that you couldn't find in a dictionary. Nobody had any idea. No, they hadn't heard half of what I thought of as my vocabulary had never been heard of before. So I said things. Some of you say things like this here, but maybe even this won't be familiar to you. I said things like 4 in the morning, and I said things like finna. Do y'all say finna? See, y'all are looking at me crazy. So finna. Y'all don't know the word finna? You know finna because you're from the South. You know finna. Finna's a word that is sort of, I guess, some kind of a contraction of fixing to, which comes from going to. But in a sentence, you would say, I'm finna head to the store. And that would mean I am about to go to the store. So another one of those words that I made use of that made people very nervous on the West Coast is the word nim. Now, y'all might not know the word nim because we're pretty far north here. But nim just means that person and everyone you associate with that person. To put it in context, if you went to high school with somebody, and in high school when you were friends with them, you knew their family, y'all hung out pretty tight, and y'all hadn't seen each other for a long time. When you see them again, you might say something like, hey, how you doing? How is your mama and them? Is how that works. Nim. They said to say goodnight and not goodbye. Unplugged the TV when it rained. They hid money in mattresses so to sleep on decisions. Some of their children were not their children. Some of their parents had no birth dates. They could sweat a cold out of you. They'd wake without an alarm telling them to. Even the short ones reached certain shelves. Even the skinny, cooked animals too quick to catch. And I don't care how ugly one of them arrived. That one got married to somebody fine. They fed families with change and wiped their kitchens clean. Then another century came. People like me forgot their names. As a human being, there is the happiness you have and the happiness you deserve. They sit apart from each other, the way you and your mother sat on opposite ends of the sofa after an ambulance came to take your father away. Some good doctor will stitch him up, and soon an aunt will arrive to drive your mother to the hospital, where she will settle next to him forever, as promised. She holds the arm of her seat as if she could fall, as if it is the only sturdy thing. And it is, since you've done what you always wanted. You fought your father and won, marred him. He'll have a scar he can see, all because of you. And your mother, the only woman you ever cried for, must tend to it as a bride tends to her vows, forsaking all others, no matter how sore the injury. No matter how sore the injury has left you, you sit understanding yourself as a human being, finally free now that nobody's got to love you. I wrote this next poem after finding out about and being confounded by the very long list of people who have supposedly committed suicide while in police custody. That list includes folk like Jesus Huerte in North Carolina, who, after having been handcuffed, after having been patted down, on the walk, while handcuffed, on the walk from the police cruiser to the building where he was to be booked, somehow managed to shoot himself in the back corner of his head. Victor White III, where I'm from in Louisiana, after having been patted down, while handcuffed, sitting in the back seat of a police cruiser, somehow managed to shoot himself in his upper back. Sandra Bland in Texas, who after a day of fighting for her life, she hung herself with a trash bag in a cell where there is video footage of her in that cell. That video stream has technical difficulty and goes out. There's something that happens with the camera for some reason. The camera goes out at just the moment that the coroner says she must have hung herself with a trash bag. Bullet points. I will not shoot myself in the head, and I will not shoot myself in the back, and I will not hang myself with a trash bag. And if I do, I promise you, I will not do it in a police car while handcuffed, or in the jail cell of a town I only know the name of because I have to drive through it to get home. Yes, I may be at risk, but I promise you, I trust the maggots who live beneath the floorboards of my house to do what they must to any carcass, more than I trust an officer of the law of the land to shut my eyes like a man of God might, or to cover me with a sheet so clean my mother could have used it to tuck me in. When I kill me, I will do it the same way most Americans do. I promise you, cigarette smoke, or a piece of meat on which I choke, or so broke I freeze in one of these winters we keep calling worst. I promise if you hear of me dead anywhere near a cop, then that cop killed me. He took me from us and left my body, which is, no matter what we've been taught, greater than the settlement a city can pay a mother to stop crying. and more beautiful than the new bullet fished from the folds of my brain. I wasn't going to read this poem, but Raina mentioned Ohio earlier, where she went to school, and I thought there's sort of an associative, maybe not so associative connection to Ohio that this poem has. So I'll add this. The tradition. Aster, nasturtium, delphinium. We thought fingers in dirt meant it was our dirt. Learning names in heat, in elements classical philosophers said could change us. Stargazer, foxglove. Summer seemed to bloom against the will of the sun, which news reports claimed flamed hotter on this planet than when our dead fathers wiped sweat from their necks. Cosmos, baby's breath. Men like me and my brothers filmed what we planted for proof we existed before too late. Sped the video to see blossoms brought in seconds. Colors you expect in poems where the world ends. Everything cut down. John Crawford, Eric Garner, Mike Brown. For this next poem, you may want to know that Janis Joplin recorded the Gershwin standard Summertime with Big Brother and the Holding Company for their 1968 chart-topping album, Cheap Thrills. Isn't that something? She died of a heroin overdose in 1970. She was 27 years old. Track 5, Summertime, as performed by Janis Joplin. God's got his eye on me, but I ain't a sparrow. I'm more like a lawnmower. No, a chainsaw. Anything that might mangle each manicured lawn in Port Arthur, a place I wouldn't return to if the mayor offered me every ounce of oil my daddy cans at the refinery. My voice, ain't sweet. Nothing nice about it. It won't fly, even with Jesus watching. I don't believe in Jesus. The Baxter boys climbed a tree just to throw persimmons at me. The good and perfect gifts from above hit like lightning, leave bruises. So I lied. I believe, but I don't think God likes me. The girls in the locker room slapped dirty pads across my face. They called me bitch, but I never bit back. I ain't a dog. Chainsaw, I say. My voice hacks at you. I bet I tear my throat. I try so hard to sound jagged. I get high and say one thing so many times, like Willie Baker, who worked across the street. I saw some kids whip him with a belt while he repeated, please. School out, summertime, and the living lashed. Mama said I should be thankful that the town's worse to coloreds than they are to me, that I'd grow out of my acne. God must love Willie Baker, all that leather, and still a please that sounds like music. See, I wouldn't know a sparrow from a mockingbird. The band plays, I just belt out, please. This tune ain't half the blues. I should be thankful. I get high and moan like a lawnmower so nobody notices. I'm such an ugly girl. I'm such an ugly girl. I try to sing like a man. Boys call boy. I turn my face to God. I pray. I wish I could pour oil on everything green in Port Arthur. This next poem makes use of the Myth of Ganymede, which, if you do not know, is sort of a lesser known, maybe not the most known of the myths. If you do not know the myth, I think what it's about becomes clear in the poem. Ganymede. A man trades his son for horses. That's the version I prefer. I like the safety of it. No one at fault, everyone rewarded. God gets the boy. The boy becomes immortal. His father rides until grief sounds as good as the gallop of an animal born to carry those who patrol our inherited kingdom. When we look at myth this way, nobody bothers saying, rape. I mean, don't you want God to want you? Don't you dream of someone with wings taking you up? And when the master comes for our children, he smells like the men who own stables in heaven, that far terrain between promise and apology. No one has to convince us. The people of my country believe we can't be hurt if we can be bought. Thank you. So just a few more poems. I'm reading to you retrospectively, which is to say I'm reading from my first book, Please, from my second book, The New Testament. My mother's still angry with me about that title. And I'm also mostly reading to you from my brand new baby book, The Tradition. Isn't she beautiful? Don't you think she's gorgeous? I think she's beautiful. She's 8 months old. She's already walking. I'm very proud. I'm very proud of her. And I'm a poet, and my responsibility, I really do believe this. My responsibility as a poet. I only have people talk about responsibility in poetry all the time, and I think my only responsibility as a poet is to tell you the truth. So I'm going to tell you something that I know to be true. You do not have to like these poems to buy this book. And if you just need an added reason, this is the best. I mean, it's just the best book cover on any book of poetry ever. You gotta love this thing. So one reason, if you don't like the poems and you feel like, you just need a reason, you can always tell people, I bought it for my coffee table. I bought it for the cover. And just put that right on. And maybe this is an excuse to finally get a coffee table. So, one of the features of this book is a form I invented called the Duplex. The Duplex is at once a huzzle, a sonnet, and a blues poem. I'm going to read one for you now, and I think it's 9 to 11 syllables a line. And if you're interested in making one of your own, there have been some duplexes now in some magazines that I've been seeing come out. And if you're interested in making one, there's an essay that I wrote about how to go about making a duplex in terms of its guidelines and the form itself at the Poetry Foundation on the Harriet blog. And it's called the essay is called Invention. So you can find it if you Google Jericho Brown and Invention. Duplex. I begin with love, hoping to end there. I don't want to leave a messy corpse. I don't want to leave a messy corpse full of medicines that turn in the sun. Some of my medicines turn in the sun. Some of us don't need hell to be good. Those who need most need hell to be good. What are the symptoms of your sickness? Here is one symptom of my sickness. Men who love me are men who miss me. Men who leave me are men who miss me in the dream where I am an island. In the dream where I am an island, I grow green with hope. I'd like to end there. So, and I'll finish. Thank you so much. Thank you all so much. I'll finish with some love poems. I'd like to leave you with some love poems because that's how I'd like to leave this earth. I know that who knows that people will say anything about anybody, but I imagine if people have anything to say about me, they will say that I wrote all of these supposedly political poems. And I hope that y'all are there to tell them, well, actually, he was a love poet, because that's how I see myself. I'm going to prove it to you right now. Can I read you some love poems? You have to ask for consent. It's funny, I've been able, the wonderful thing about this book is that it's given me the opportunity, one of the wonderful things about this book is it's given me the opportunity to travel abroad and give readings from it and see places I never thought I'd be able to see, that I didn't even know to be interested in seeing. So I've been to Singapore and Spain and Germany and some other places. And whenever I'm abroad, and when you see a couple, when you see two people who are together, in that way that people get together, you know it. Do y'all know what I'm talking about? And it's very interesting because, in the American context, if you were to see them, you would say, get a room. Do y'all know what I mean? So it's so funny in the United States, people could be together like forever. And sometimes I look at audiences and I'm like, are y'all brother and sister or what? It's like hard to tell. So I figure if I read these love poems, they could help, You never know. You never know which day might be finally. I'll also just say that this first one is a poem about, I love poetry more than anything, except one thing, and that's cuddling. And I'm really proud of this poem because it's about cuddling. So who gets to have two of their favorite things at the same time? Stand. Peace on this planet, or guns glowing hot. We lay there together as if we were getting something done. It felt like planting a garden or planning a meal for a people who still need feeding. All that touching, or barely touching, not saying much, not adding anything. The cushion of it, the skin, and occasional sigh, all seemed like work worth mastering. I'm sure somebody died while we made love. Somebody killed, somebody black. I thought then of holding you as a political act. I may as well have held myself. We didn't stand for one thought, didn't do a damn thing. And though you left me, I'm glad we didn't. And thank you. I'll finish with the last poem in the book. The last poem in the book is the last duplex in the book. The last poem in the book is a duplex. I explained to y'all before that the duplex is a hustle, a sonnet, and a blues poem at once. This final duplex in the book adds a layer of form because it's also a cento. As you know, a cento is a poem that takes all of its lines from other poems. This cento is a little bit different because all of the lines come from all of the other duplexes in the book. So you might hear a line I've said before, but it's not because I'm unoriginal. This always, I'm always happy to read the last poem in a book. This is one of the ways that we're all poets here. This is a poetry play. This is a poetry center, so I'm not going to get beat up when I say this. Poetry is the superior genre. Because when you're a fiction writer, you can't read the last page of your book. Duplex, cento. My last love drove a burgundy car, color of a rash, a symptom of sickness. We were the symptoms, the road, our sickness. None of our fights ended where they began. None of the beaten end where they begin. Any man in love can cause a messy corpse, but I didn't want to leave a messy corpse obliterated in some lilied field. Stench obliterating lilies of the field, the murderer young and unreasonable. He was so young, so unreasonable, steadfast and awful, tall as my father. Steadfast and awful, my tall father was my first love. He drove a burgundy car. Thank y'all so much. Wow.